April 12, 1894, the Lewiston Daily Sun, Lewiston, Maine. A drowning man's experience. To prevent any person from interfering with my design, I jumped into the river late in the afternoon Friday. No one appeared to be about at the time. When I struck the water, I immediately sank, going down, and yet being carried forward until I thought I would never again arise. A sound roared through my head. It seemed to me it would burst. I opened my mouth and attempted to breathe, being unable to endure the pressure longer, but the water rushed in and I closed my mouth. I was again compelled to open it. More water entered. The feeling was horrible. Just when I thought all was over, I reached the surface of the water about 50 feet from the shore and 100 feet from where I had jumped in. Nearby was a steamboat on which stood a man with a long pole with an iron hook on the end. It took only a second to see those things, and in fact, I had just time to get one breath when I again sank with my mouth open. My past life flashed before me, and I was again a child. The picture of my father and mother stood out in bold relief. I reached out my hand to them. The roaring of the water sounded like the sweetest of music. Suddenly I saw light and thought I was in paradise. A large green field covered with roses and other flowers, whose fragrance I could smell, came in view. I felt as if I were being borne up by some winged messenger whom I could not see, but whose presence I could feel. I remembered nothing more until I felt a rough jerk. My rescuer had succeeded in fastening the boat hook in my clothing. As my body was being pulled from out of the water, the picture changed. Instead of paradise, the place in which the devil dwells, with all its fires and swarming with hideous red-dressed creatures and other things, presented themselves in my mind, only to again quickly disappear and leave me in darkness. When I came to, I was surprised to learn I had been unconscious. Every muscle in my body pained me, but my brain was perfectly clear. Drowning, after the first stages are passed, is pleasant. St. Louis Republic. October 29, 1894, the Pittsburgh Press, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. 2 horse suicides. Both white, but no auburn-haired ladies reported present. The police of the 2nd District, as well as Humane Agent O'Brien, were greatly exercised today over the peculiar death of 2 horses, suffering from influenza for several days. One of the animals deliberately rolled over into a sewer ditch and cut its throat on a bar of iron, while the other jumped over a stone wall and rolled into the hollow, a distance of about 100 feet. Both suicides occurred about the same time yesterday afternoon, and a very peculiar coincidence in connection with the matter was that both the horses were white. Several days ago, George McCutcheon of Lincoln Avenue, East End, noticed that his little white horse, which was quite a pet, was ailing with influenza. Much attention was paid to the animal, and almost constant watch was kept over it. On Saturday, Mr. McCutcheon had occasion to go to the mountains for a few days. He left special instructions with the family to take good care of the horse, which he thought was better. These instructions were being carried out, but the animal seemed to grow worse, and yesterday afternoon, about 6 o'clock, he broke loose from the stable, ran up the avenue, and stopping at the edge of a sewer ditch, deliberately rolled into it. A piece of sharp iron was wedged across the ditch, and on this the animal cut his throat and bled to death. The whole procedure was witnessed by a number of people who attempted to stop the animal, and all who saw it declared that the horse became despondent over the absence of his master and committed the act. About the same time in the evening, a white horse was seen to pass up Wilmot Street, Oakland. Officer O'Brien and several persons watched its movements, which seemed peculiar. The animal went to the edge of the stone wall at the end of the bridge and deliberately jumped over. Humane Agent O'Brien, who was notified, stated that he firmly believed the animal had committed suicide. In speaking of the case this morning, a gentleman in the East End said, "Both horses were evidently attacked with influenza and suffering much pain. It is not generally believed that a horse would take his own life, but I think that is the case this time. The disease is a bad one, and the animals suffer much from it." February 11, 1924, The Evening News, San Jose, California. Suicides grow in numbers in U.S. Suicide mortality in California and Washington is above the average for the country, according to statistics compiled in the research department of the Metropolitan Life Insurance Company. The records showing the extent of self-destruction among wage earners in the United States gives an average suicide rate of 7.4 per 100,000. The table giving the suicide figures for each state reveals the fact that excessive rates prevail in the West, Southwest, and South. The rate in California is 8.8, while in Washington the percentage of suicides is 8.7. Oklahoma heads the list with the highest mortality of any state in the country. According to the report, suicide is much more prevalent among city dwellers than in the rural population. The figures for the industrially insured are regarded as relatively low. This confirms the fact that self-destruction is more prevalent among those engaged in intellectual pursuits and those in better circumstances economically than among wage earners. The report states that approximately 3 men commit suicide each year to every woman who destroys her own life. Suicide by poison is said to be the means most frequently employed by women, while firearms are the commonest means employed by men. Suicide statistics show there were more than 7 times as many suicides by shotguns and revolvers among men over a given period as among women. Hanging is said to be next important as a means of suicide among men. Women, it appears, rarely choose either of these methods of self-destruction. Next to solid and liquid poisons, figures show that women prefer asphyxiation as a means of suicide. Careful study on the part of statisticians in the Metropolitan's Research Department reveals the fact that women almost invariably choose relatively slow methods of self-destruction and those which do not tend to draw blood or disfigure the body.